Welcome to this video version of my research presentation at IKES 2014. I'm Thomas Lancaster, bringing this to you alongside Robert Clark from Birmingham City University. Unfortunately, we're not able to be there in person at IKES, but hopefully this presentation will give you an idea of the types of areas within contract cheating that we're interested in and how we think contextual information available within auction posts on agency websites can help with automated detection. I want to start this talk with a bit of background about myself and Bob and our role in contract cheating research, because this is an area which we've been involved in since 2005. We've got plenty of experience within this field. Personally, I'm a senior lecturer in computing at Birmingham City University, in charge of the BSc Computer Science, which is our biggest computing course. We turn out a lot of very talented graduates ready to go straight into professional employment in the workplace. I also lead the Innovations in Computing Education group at Birmingham City University, and my interest in contract cheating stems way back to my PhD looking at effective and efficient plagiarism detection, where I argued that plagiarism could be best detected by combining together a computerized process with manual human-aided support. I work with Robert Clark in this field of research, who is now an educational consultant, although that really belittles his achievements within education, with over 30 years experience teaching at Birmingham City University. Bob still spends a lot of time in the classroom as a visiting lecturer. He was a principal lecturer before his retirement, and Bob likes to spend his evenings, weekends, spare time trying to find students who are attempting to cheat, or more specifically attempting to contract cheat. He's found more than 19,000 attempts by students to cheat, and a lot of our research is based on that huge database of information that Robert has collected. I said a few minutes ago that we're the real originators of this field of research into contract cheating. There are plenty more people now interested in cheating, plagiarism, academic integrity, and all the associated areas, but this is a publication or a news story of ours dating back to 2006, when we first really started to work hard to publicize this problem, presented on the BBC News website, and it just talked about our early research. As a quote from me, if you go back and read the whole article, it's quite early on now, but it showed people who were putting their coursework up on the internet and suppliers were bidding to complete the work for the student. So the student would put up a piece of work they wanted completing, let's say some form of computer program, and then using these sites, at this time the main site we looked at was rentacoder.com, suppliers or coders would bid to produce the work. So almost like an eBay type system, they would say how much money they wanted to do that work for the student, and the student would make their decision out of the different bids that came in, perhaps going for the cheapest, or perhaps looking at the type of feedback that that potential coder had got. They would choose somebody and they'd get a piece of work, they'd hand it in, and if they repeated this enough times, they would have a degree or other academic qualification from that. And you'll note the comment below the picture there. Research suggests universities need better detection. I'll blow that up for you so you can see it. And that was very much the trend in 2006, that we needed detection, because academics wouldn't necessarily spot their work being placed on these cheating sites, that they wouldn't even know about them. And even when detectives like Robert Clark spend their evenings and weekends looking for this, they can't possibly find every attempt by a student to cheat. So what detection methods are there available out there? And that was a question we asked back in 2006. It's a question we are still asking today, so it shows you that even though we've got much more understanding of the problem, we understand the scale of it, the scope of it, and you can read a lot more about that in our other research and look at our other talks. We still haven't solved this particular problem. I need to address something you may be thinking, what about Turnitin? Well, Turnitin is a brilliant tool for academics. It's also a great tool to help students to learn how to write and reference correctly. But Turnitin, although it's the world's leading example, it's only a text similarity detection engine. It will find pieces of text that are similar to other pieces of text. And this is an area I worked quite heavily in my own PhD research. It's fairly well defined and solved problem now, but Turnitin will find when a student's work that's been uploaded matches another source. So it might be an internet source, it might be their database of journal papers, it might be a previous student submission. But contract cheating takes place when a student pays to have bespoke, original work produced for them. So that means it's all very well, the student hands that in, it gets uploaded to Turnitin, but Turnitin isn't going to find a source for that because it's original. Somebody has sat down and they've done that program from scratch, they've created that database from scratch, they've written that essay from scratch, and Turnitin doesn't solve. So we need to look at alternative methods of detection. And that is really where I feel, and Robert and I argue in the associated paper, which goes into a lot more detail than this talk, that the role of context can come in. And the hypothesis from the paper is that if we can identify the wider context from a request placed by a student online on an agency site, then that will help us to attribute the student who is cheating. And there is a whole host of contextual information available there which a detective can see, but which I believe an automated system can help us to gather and find and to intelligently process. There are two stages to attribution, and again this has been covered in our previous work on attribution. But first of all, when we find an assignment detail online, the first thing is to work out which university this assignment is from, and that is very occasionally easy. Sometimes it will say in big letters across the top of the assignment brief the name of the university, but often it's quite hard because that information just isn't provided with the request for whatever reason. The student may have stripped it out, or it may have been kept hidden. The manual method of searching then is usually to try and do a Google search and see what that finds. And again, that may find assignment details online, but so often now assignment details are kept completely hidden inside a private database. For instance, a university may use Blackboard, so their assignment details are not available more widely, at which point again it's very tough. So there are all sorts of other contextual clues, some of which I'll cover in this talk. When we do get to the stage of knowing the university, you still have to know which student has attempted to cheat, and there aren't really that many students who put their name in big letters with the work. Some do. More often it's a case of finding other clues, or it's a case of letting the university from which this cheating student has been drawn know, so that they can attempt to use their own mechanisms to identify the individual student. And there are all kinds of methods they can use. Perhaps they just look for work which is out of place compared to everything else which has been submitted. But this is where contextual information can help us, but it also means that we have to consider context in both locations, from the wider role of a detective looking to attribute individual assignments to academic institutions, to the more local role of an academic looking to attribute which individual student has cheated out of a larger cohort. I think at this point it's worthwhile looking at two examples of contract cheating, and I've pulled these together today, which at the time of recording this presentation is May 2014. So these are still live. They're both found on Freelancer.com, which is the largest agency type site now where students can post work they want completed and put this out to tender. Freelancer, of course, is not just a site for students looking to cheat. It has perfectly legitimate business uses as well. But these two examples I found in a matter of minutes. They're very easy. There is even a section designated academic writing on there, which is where I found this example from. And it's also a computing example. Academic writing is the title. An assignment proposal needing to be done by Monday. So you can see this is a student who's up against a tight deadline, 1,500 words on the topic entrepreneurship. That's a really hot topic within computing education in the UK right now, trying to produce people who can start their own business and can put computing into its wider entrepreneurial context. And it's asking for good US/UK English. In my mind, that suggests it may well be a UK assignment based on my own knowledge of the interest in this area, and just because people in the US don't tend to ask about UK writing. But there isn't that much information here to go on directly, but you will see little things. You'll see that the person asking for work has had 4 previous reviews, presumably of successful work. So if we wanted, we could look and see what that work was for. That might give us some more contextual clues about where this work was from. You can see the country there from that flag, which might suggest where this person is from again. However, sometimes these flags are red herrings. What they've done here is they have managed to hide a username. Sometimes we can see a username, which may help us to track down this information. There also isn't an assignment brief visible here, which is really useful. But sometimes a request for the assignment brief will be enough, and these people have bid on it. You'll see there are 23 different people have bid to complete this with an average bid of $54. We'll ask for the assignment brief, so that's perfectly fine to do. It may be an added complication for an automated system. And we can also get some additional clues by looking at the type of people who've bid on this work as well. I'll show you a second example now of another aspect, another area of computing. Here is what looks to me to be a fairly standard first year programming assignment, CS1 assignment. Java bank account open to bidding, and you notice it's a repost, presumably because they failed to find somebody to do this work straight away. And I suspect, looking at this, it's because this person has no previous feedback. They've got no star ratings, 0 reviews, but what they have got there is a quite descriptive username. There may be something there which we could use, perhaps by stripping out the word job at the end to see what that came back with. And more importantly in this one, there is a long section of text here about what the assignment is about, and in fact this goes on several screens more than I could include in the screenshot. And if we were to do a search for this information, providing it wasn't private, we might be able to find something. Now, I do see an immediate danger with this one from my own experience, and a Java bank account assignment is really common. This assignment gets set all around the world time and again, and it will make it more difficult to identify a university. If this is unique in some form, and we can use the other contextual clues, because often for a detective it's just like a detective in any other situation, it's a case of putting many small clues together, we'll have enough here to solve who has put this up and why they've put this up. But it is tricky when such common assignments are set, and that's a recommendation for academics and professors stroke lecturers watching this video to try and come up with unique assignments, because they make them more interesting for you, for your students, and they make them much easier to track. By all means, take these 2 examples as puzzles to work out and see what you can find, and see what other contextual clues you can get when you drill down into more detail and think about how this whole process could be automated, which is really the discussion which is being opened here as we work towards intelligent detection of contract cheating by using context to help us. And I want us to think about automated detection as how we can use agency sites such as Freelancer.com and how we can collect the information from these, and in particular automatically classify and grab the context, and this probably needs some kind of scraping of the site. There are RSS feeds, but they don't provide all of the information. And it may well be that trying to simulate the process by a detective as closely as possible and the kind of decisions made would be perfectly suited for an artificial intelligence type system, which is weighing up the balance of probability in this form. So what kind of context can we find there? I've shown you some examples as we've looked at the two indicative examples earlier in this talk, but here are just a few examples. There are a lot more in the paper, and the paper also classifies them, but we could look at the text of the cheating request. This may be just clearly just presented within the writing, but perhaps it would be an attachment, so it needs opening and analyzing. It may even be included within a zip file. But does it match known assignment content? Does it include institutional identifiers? And these may not be as blatant as the name of a university. They may just be something like a unique course code or the name of a lecturer, which can be tracked. Also, what information is there about the person who's asked for this work? So things like the username could be used on other sites. The history, the photo could be analysed to see, is this same photo used on other sites? Because some people put up their own a known photo of themselves. The stated location, which often is accurate because people do put up their own location because of the various checks Freelancer uses when letting people set up accounts. Now, it can be changed afterwards. That's not always completely accurate. The other complication here is it's not always the student putting the work up. Sometimes it can be a third party, or as we call them, a third party subcontractor. The student gets somebody to do their work who then outsources it themselves. That is one of the best business models we've seen in contract cheating, and you may want to look at one of our previous papers looking at the financial side of contract cheating for more information on how that works. But that's not a full set of context. So what other contexts do we need? Well, we need information to match this against, and this is where it gets really tricky. And ideally we need a copy of all the assignment briefs provided worldwide in every subject, because so many of them are hidden, and that's one of the biggest frustrations for a human contract cheating detective. It's perhaps not realistic, but perhaps we can approximate this in some form. We also need details of all the students studying worldwide. All information, where are they based, where is their home location, because it may be an international student or somebody who's moved away from home to study at university. And what kind of identifying and characteristic information can we get about those students? And here, this may be where things like student writing style can be used as an additional indication, an additional clue for our contract cheating detective. Now, these are all very difficult, but perhaps we can approximate these. And I told you earlier on, a detective uses a Google search because Google essentially matches to a massive database. The thing we don't have full control of with Google is the algorithm, but we know it seems to work fairly well, and they use their algorithm to provide high quality information. And I also know that Google tries to keep recent information correct and high up in the search rankings, so we may be able to get some decent information there and feed that into our automated system. And this may not just be assignment information, it may extend to images, university contact information, etc. Can we use sites like Facebook for social media information, which is where a lot of the information we need about students is kept hidden? And an area where we've had some success recently, we published a paper for the Higher Education Academy STEM conference around 3 weeks ago in April 2014, is looking at augmenting this information using Turnitin. Although I said that Turnitin is not great for finding contract cheating, one thing it can find is assignment information which is online, such as the assignment brief. And we've had some success by uploading assignment briefs to Turnitin and just seeing what comes back and looking at the very small matches, the 1%, the 2%, to see what's returned. And this can match clues from other student work which has been uploaded. And one reason this works is quite often a student, when they upload their solution to an assignment, they put copies of the questions in there as well. So even though the assignment isn't immediately available through Google because it's private, it has ended up in the Turnitin database. So there's a lot of potential to do some work with Turnitin to try and extend these systems. But again, we don't have full control of the algorithm involved. But I think if you put together all these different techniques, or even just focus in on one or more of these techniques, you can have a very powerful context-aware system. I want to conclude this talk with some recommendations and to think about some partial solutions. And you'll see these mentioned in the paper, some of the work we've done before, the 6-stage contract cheating detection process, which involves collecting together information about assignments, gathering them, putting them into a database, analyzing that database, and trying to attribute work to a source institution and student. It's a powerful technique. It's very suited for adding some of these intelligent system techniques to it and looking at context. The use of stylometrics, which essentially is looking at student writing style and trying to match writing styles from students to papers and to work found online, is very powerful as well. I think there's a whole host more work can be done just in thinking about stylometrics and the way students write socially. But if that can be combined with academic work, and there are challenges getting this, then again, that's an additional clue for the detective which can be really useful. We've also made the suggestion for attribution for academics to look at watermarking their assignments, which means putting methods into their assignment briefs that allow the institution to be identified and to allow an individual student to be identified. And these may be very visible, such as names, contact details, but they may be hidden as well. For instance, a unique combination of blank spaces, additional blank spaces and different points which enable a student to be identified. And we have had some reports from people we've contacted in our roles as detectives now who have been doing watermarking. They've been giving every student a slightly different brief, and they've used this to identify students for contract cheating. So this is great, but I think this needs the tools putting together to enable people to do this much more easily and to then work in both directions. Really, it's a form of encryption to put the assignment brief for the student into appropriate form and then to match that against the different patterns when an assignment brief is found on an agency site. And so the community role is to develop these systems. I want to throw out this as a challenge to universities who do have these skills and who do have students who I think are our greatest resource, both project, capstone projects, undergraduate projects, master's projects, research projects. There is several really good PhD projects available in these areas, whether it's looking at the style or the artificial intelligence or combining both of them, and to try and put together tools. And my PhD thesis argued about combining together both automated tools and human-led tools, and I think this is the same for contract cheating. This is going to be the initial avenue to explore here, because we will never get 100% success from either system. You'll never get a human detective who spots every assignment just because they don't have time. They're not on duty 24/7. So just by having a tool there which won't miss anything and which can be continually available scraping those sites, that already improves the effectiveness. But likewise, you can never assume that a tool will correctly attribute and find every piece of contract cheating. So there has to be a human-led checking stage in there. And this checking stage may not be done by the detective at all. It may be a case that an email is fired off to an institution, to a particular identifiable tutor within an institution, and says, do you want to check this and feedback as to whether you think this is an assignment from your university? That could be another approach which uses the power of the human computer, which is a really great way to make progress here. And I think we need to look at the role of context, because I've only scraped the surface here in this talk and in this paper about how context can feed in. There is a lot more work to be done by people who are much more deeply ingrained within this field of research than I am. Most importantly, I want to throw out the question of continued awareness, and for us to make sure people know about this. I give a lot of talks around the UK, and I'm happy to go and speak around the world if the appropriate opportunities arise, about contract cheating. And yes, there are plenty of people who know about contract cheating, but there are many others who seem to be completely unaware of it. They don't know that sites like this exist, or all the other methods that a student can use to outsource an original assignment, whether it's an essay bank or whether it's getting their friend to do the work. Are they turning a blind eye, or they're really unaware, which can be possible? But we need to educate people, we need to tell them about this, we need to talk about it, we need to make it very clear when we have found a student cheating that everybody knows about this and they look out for it. Because I don't believe there are any institutions in the world where there are no students who are contract cheating, despite what some institutions may like to say to the media. And we need to think about how we're going to change the way that assignments are set and delivered and how we teach students in this modern age of the internet. And there's all kinds of educational research going alongside this, looking at how students learn, and perhaps maybe some of these changes will help to motivate students to do their own work and to design out the reasons why students choose to contract cheat. If we don't do that, we're in danger of our academic qualifications losing their value, because who wants to employ a student when we know that they've got this work by cheating? And cheats soon get found out in the workplace, but this really doesn't give a good impression of the academic institution from where this student graduated. Hopefully this presentation has been useful for you about our initial work really on embedding context into the contract cheating process and how this can be detected. There's a lot more information available out there, and there's some details there. You can find out more about me on my site at thomaslancaster.co.uk, and there's also a link to my blog there where there are plenty of posts on contract cheating and links to many academic papers within this field. There's also contact information for Robert Clark. You can access these slides at slideshare.net/Thomas Lancaster, and again, there are lots of copies of other talks, other keynotes I've given in this area available on there as well. And I just want to conclude by asking you to think about a bit of discussion areas, which are to think about how can we gather this context automatically. This may be lots of small projects to do that, to work on the scraping. What ways can we use existing systems and augment them to just efficiently process this problem? And we need to think about this because it may be we don't want to work again from scratch. When we know Google has this power, when we know Turnitin has this power, yes, they're not perfect, but if we can combine all these together, perhaps by adding some visual elements to improve the human process, where are we going to get? And I think finally it's the whole algorithms which leads into the whole area of intelligent systems, particularly context-aware systems. What techniques can we use? What are the algorithms? How can we make them efficient? Because we're dealing with vast databases of information, of context pulled from many different sources to have success with this detection. Thanks for joining me in what I feel is a really important topic, and I hope you found this video version of the IKS presentation useful. My name is Thomas Lancaster. Feel free to contact me if I can help you with your contract cheating issues.